So before I start, and I'm just going to start from the beginning as if you hadn't watched the video, all right? So y'all bear with me. All right, before we start actually factoring, let's talk about a basic form of factoring, which is a greatest common factor, or GCF. What'd you say? If I give you two things, let's start with just numbers, 10 and 25. And I asked you what the greatest common factor of those two numbers was. Not multiple. 5. What does it mean to be a factor?
Like 5 times something goes into that. Something goes into that number.
It goes into that number with no remainder, right? So what are the factors of 10?
1, 10, 25.
1, 2, 5, and 10, right? What are the factors of 25?
1, 25, 5, and 5.
So all the numbers that go in with no remainder. Does that confuse anybody? So if I talk about the greatest common factor, I'm talking about the biggest one that they have in common. So looking at those green numbers, which is the biggest one they have in common? 5. So the GCF here is 5. How about what if I put 3 numbers up there?
3.
Greatest common factor, 3. The biggest thing you can divide all 3 of them by with no remainder. Well, these 2 would be 9, but then if you include the 30 on the end, 3 is the biggest thing that goes into all 3 of them. Does that make sense? Okay. What if then I wrote it like this, and I asked you to factor out the greatest common factor. So what I'm thinking is opposite distributing, okay? So I want to take it out. Well, first of all, what is the GCF here? 3. We all agree that's the GCF? So exactly, you're going to divide. When you distribute, you multiply. So when I factor out, I divide. So if I take a 3 out, what's left? What would need to go here if you multiplied to get 9x? 3x plus 2. Do we all see that? This is a basic form of factoring. What factoring does is it takes an expression and it breaks it into multiplied pieces. Okay? I just divided both of them by 3.
So you find the greatest common factor and you divide it by 3.
Correct. Correct. This is, we've been doing a lot of distributing, foiling, and that kind of thing. This is the backwards of that. This is undoing foiling and undoing distributing. What if how about here? Does it have a GCF?
No.
1 what?
1x.
1x. Does everybody see? I could take an x out of everything, right? Put it on the outside. So what's left? What would need to go here to make this x to the 3rd? 1 what? Squared, exactly. Plus, what goes in the middle? 3x plus 5. Again, I just did a basic form of factoring. In this case, the GCF was x. You can have a GCF that's a variable. Yeah, right.
Hey, why didn't you put the exponent with that 3x?
Because it had a 2, so there's an imaginary 1. So x times 3x would give me the 3x squared back.
You gotta take one.
You're basically taking 1x away from everything when you factor it out like that. Variables are a little different than the numbers in front. All right. Let me talk to you for just a second about what factoring looks like. Plus. When you go from this top expression down here, that I haven't shown you how to do it yet. I just want to show you what it looks like first. That's factoring, okay? I've taken this and broken it up into two things that multiply together. Now, I could go backwards and come back to this by foiling if I wanted to. I just really want you to see what factoring is. So from here to here, this is a FOIL. Does that make sense? Not do you know how to do it, but does it make sense that I'm just rewriting it? Watch, Bryce, watch what happens. If I FOIL this out, x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 3 times x is, and 3 times 2 is, and if I combine my like terms here, it's the same thing. It has the same value. I'm teaching you how to write it a different way as a multiplication problem. Kind of like the difference in writing 6 and 2 times 3. It has the same value. It's just written a different way. Okay? All right. So before we factor, you have to understand some things about signs. And I'm going to write, I think I'll write you a chart over here. So your signs, when you factor, you always look, I'll write it here first. I'll put the chart over here. You always look at the second sign. And whenever I'm talking about second sign, if I look at that same example, x squared plus 5x plus 6, this is the second sign. Okay? There are two possibilities for my second sign. It could be a what? What is it now? A plus. What's the other option? A minus, right? So if the second sign is a plus, then factored, both signs are the same as the first. Okay, so in this one, whenever I'm talking about factored, I'm talking about whenever I get it broke in two pieces like this. If the second sign is plus, then they both follow the first. So 2 pluses here when it's factored. Okay, so that means what I start with and what I end with. If I start with plus plus, then I end with plus plus. And I'm talking about if I start here, then I end here. Do you understand what I'm referencing here? Okay. Minus plus, still if the second sign is plus, they both follow the first, so factored is going to be minus minus. Okay? Which means had this been x squared minus 5x plus 6, this would be x minus 2, x minus 3. Okay? All right. If the second sign is minus, I'm going to end up with mixed signs. And when I show you how to go through the box, it'll tell you which one's plus and which one's minus. So if I have plus minus or minus minus, I have mixed signs. I'm going to give you a second to catch up with me. You have this sheet in front of you. I'm going to walk you through this sheet, factoring the problem that's on there so you don't have to worry about copying down as we go. All right, so there's a couple little asterisks there at the top that you have to remember before you start, okay? The first thing says always check for a common term, and if you want to write GCF right there, That's what that means. So if these have a GCF, I have to take it out first and put it on the outside. A GCF bigger than 1, I should say. So do those have a GCF?
No.
No. So I'm good with that. The second thing that says to check your signs. So look at this and look at the chart and tell me what your signs are going to look like. Plus, plus. Okay? If you want to write this oh, it is on there. If the signs are the same, even if they're both negative, you don't have to keep up with the signs at all. Keep everything positive, okay? The only time we worry about signs is when we're in a mixed situation here.
So what? So negative, change them back to positive?
Say that again?
Be negative, change them back to positive?
If the second one's plus, yes. Yes, as we go through. I'm gonna do an example of all 4 scenarios with you and you'll see. All right, so we set up our box. The first term goes in the first box. The last term goes in the last box. Okay? Now here's the part that no matter what method you use, you're going to have to do this. Okay? You multiply these two together. I need 2 things. This is the puzzle of it, okay? I need 2 things that multiply to this, but add to this. Okay? So 2 things, and if you don't know, you can start listing out. Well, what multiplies to 12x squared? 12x and 1x, right? 6x and 2x.
3 plus 4.
3 and 4, right? So of all of those, which ones add to 7? 3 and 4. So that's my missing 2 boxes. It does not matter where they go. If you switch them up and put them the other way, it doesn't matter. The hard part's over now. When you find the 2 numbers from your missing box, that's the hardest part of everything in factoring, okay? Because now, if you can find a GCF, you can factor. So what you want to do is you want to go up each row and across each column, finding the GCF. So if I come up this way, what's the 2 what? 2x, because I can take an x away from both of them. I'm looking for the GCF. Biggest thing I can divide them both by, no remainder. Everybody see where that 2x came from? Okay. How about here, GCF? 1. I can't divide 2 and 3 by anything other than 1, right? How about a cross?
3.
3 what?
3x.
3x. If they both have an x, take the x with it. Okay? And how about here? 2. It is now factored for you. You have to go back and remember, what were my signs going to be? Plus, 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 plus. So you just write it. 2x plus 1, 3x plus 2. If you FOIL that back out, you'll get where you started. That's it. That's all. Yep.
That's all I got to do.
Mm-hmm. Nope. Well, you know, sometimes I teach you one thing, but I like to tell you something else later on. I'm picking on you because you said that I... Never mind. All right, let's do another one, because they are going to get a little bit harder. And what's going to get harder is when we start mixing the signs. So let me find a good one here. Let's do... We'll stay a little bit easy too here. All right, step 1. Do you see a GCF in this trinomial?
No.
Nope. So check. I'm good on that, right?
No.
Step 2. What are the signs going to look like?
Negative.
Both of them are minus, right? So when they're both minus, don't keep up with the signs. Make a note. Don't keep up with signs. So, set up your box. What goes in the first box? First term, first box. Last term, last box. Anybody confused on setting it up so far?
So I changed that plus to negative. Negative.
No, don't just keep everything positive. When they're the same, any of these scenarios, just keep everything positive until the end. Okay? Multiply those two things together. Oh, man. I wrote wrong. Make that last term a 2. I apologize. That's the only thing I changed. Well, I looked at it and I went, I don't know of anything that multiplies to 4 but adds to 9, so I knew I'd written it wrong. All right, so now I'm to 8x squared. Exactly. Because 4 times 2 is 8. So I need two things that multiply to 8x squared but add to 9x. Don't worry about the signs right now. Okay, so 8 and 1 is what y'all said, right? 8x and 1x. Why does 4x and 2x not work? It doesn't give you 9 when you add it together. Okay? It doesn't matter which box you put them in. Fill in the missing 2 boxes. Okay? Now let's go up and over. GCF here. I heard 4 for x. Make sure you keep that x because they both have an x. How about the next column? 1. I can't divide 1 and 2 by anything other than 1, right? How about here? 1x, exactly. Remember, if they both have an x, take the x. And how about here? 2. And I don't want to embarrass you or anything. But make sure when you go through here, because that's a common mistake, don't divide these two numbers. Find the GCF of those two numbers. Everybody always wants to do that. Don't divide the two, but find the GCF, okay? Now go back. What were my signs going to look like? So, 4x minus 1, x minus 2.
Teachers are better than sub here.
Well,
You know, we asked her a question and she goes, well, I don't know how to demonstrate that. And she goes,
let's do, and the only way to get good at these is the practice. You just have to practice them. The hardest part, again, is finding those factors that multiply and add right. All right. Do I have a GCF? And we are going to do one that has the GCF in just a minute. But do I have a GCF here? No. No. Okay. So I'm good there. What are the signs going to look like? Mixed signs. Now, if they're mixed, keep up with them in the box. Okay. So, the first box is what? 7x squared. What goes in the last box? Negative 3. Multiply these two things together, and what do you get? Negative 21x squared. Now, here's where you have to think. Because my signs are mixed, I need one positive, one negative. Okay? What multiplies to negative 21, but adds, remember I got to keep up with the signs, it's got to add to negative 20.
Negative 1 times 20.
Close.
Negative 20 times 1. Or negative 20 plus 1.
Negative 21
Times 1.
times positive 1.
Yeah.
All right, so mixed signs means one positive, one negative, right? So and if you don't know, start listing out the factors. I got 21 and negative 1. 7 and -3, or -7 and +3? Is that all that multiplies to 21? Yeah. So of all those, which ones add to -20x? Do we see? The mixed signs are definitely harder than the same sign ones.
We ain't got to do all that,
Yeah.
the homework.
Yeah. This is, when I tell you this is like the backbone of Algebra 2, you have to know how to factor. All right, I got -21x and 1x. Up and over. What's the GCF? 7.
Ow.
All right, don't divide them. Look for the biggest thing that will go into both of them. So 7x. How about here? You're right, 1. How about across? 1x. Now here, I want you to look. They're both negative. So remember, if they both have an x, I take the x. If they both have a negative, take the negative. So what's the GCF? -3. This is how you can tell. Remember, the signs are mixed? This is how you can tell. When I come across here, they both have a negative, so I take the negative. Just like when I come up here, they both have an x, I take the x. If they both have it, take it. Okay? When I came up here, only one of them had it, so I didn't take it. But when I came across here, they both had it, so I took it. Does that make sense?
No. I
Okay.
understand what you're saying, but it don't make sense.
It don't make no sense, but you understand how to tell which one's negative. Okay. Just pull the negative out, man. So now look, 7x plus 1, there's the positive, x minus 3, there's the negative.
I have a question.
Okay.
I thought negative times negative is always equal.
But remember, you're not multiplying or dividing here. What? You're taking out what they have in common.
All right. You do what you do.
Okay. Let's do another one. It's 5x. Let's do one that's got a GCF. Bless you. Plus 33x. Plus 36. What's my first step? What is it? 3. What are you finding? The what? The greatest common factor. So y'all said the greatest common factor here was 3, right? Take it out. What's left when you take it out? 11. 12. Okay? I didn't take an x out because the 36 doesn't have an x to give. To take it away, everybody has to have it. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on factoring just this. Okay? The 3 is still there, and the 3 is going to pop up in my answer, but right now, I just want to worry about factoring what's in parentheses, okay? What are my signs going to look like? Positive. Positive gives me positive, positive. Yes? Okay. So do I need to keep up with signs? No. What goes in the first box? 2x squared. What goes in the last box? 12. Put those together. Now what multiplies to 24 but adds to 11?
Oh, 8 plus 4. No. 8 plus 3. 8 times 2 8 plus 3.
Let's list them out.
8 plus 3
1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8. See what I did when I couldn't figure it out? I just started listing everything. Okay, until I get to the one that works. So now I got 3x and 8x. How about a GCF here?
One.
1 what?
X.
X. And how about here? 4. And how about here? 2 what? 2x. And here? Claus, you did it again. 3. That's always gut instinct, but don't do that. Make sure you do the GCF. So my signs were the same, right? I got the 3 that's still going to stay on the outside, but factored now I have x plus 4, 2x plus 3. Tell me what you think. Don't move the screen? Okay. All right, so to me, the mixed signs are the hardest. Students always think it's hardest when you have to take a GCF out, so let's do one that does both. Minus 24. Do I have a GCF? Yeah. What is it?
4.
4? What's the what's left when I divide everything by the 4?
3x.
3x squared, 7x.
And then minus 6.
What are the signs going to look like?
Negative.
Mixed signs, right?
Yeah.
Keep up with them. This is the hardest scenario we've got. When I multiply those together, I get
Negative 18x.
what multiplies to negative 18 but adds to negative 7, 1 positive, 1 negative. It's mixed signs. So mixed means 1 positive, 1 negative. It's got to multiply to negative 18 but add to negative 7. 9 and 2. Which one's negative?
Negative 1.
Yes? Doesn't matter which box they go in? What's the GCF?
3x.
3x. Notice I'm not making it negative because only one of them is negative. How about here?
2x.
Just 2, right? Because the 6 doesn't have an x to give. And so now let's move across.
1x.
1x,
Minus 3.
negative 3. Don't forget about that 4 that's sitting on the outside. 3x plus 2 and x minus 3.